Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how I put labels on my quilts. I've cut a square of fabric 6.5 inches by 6.5, and then I have a piece of freezer paper slightly larger. One side is shiny and one side is dull. I'm going to use this as a stabilizer so I can write a little bit easier. I'm going to put my fabric down wrong sides onto the shiny, and I'm going to flip it over and iron it from this side. All I want to do is I just want to get that fabric to stick down onto the paper. It'll make it a little bit stiffer and writing on there will be a lot easier. Once I've done that, I trim the paper off so it's a nice clean edge, and then I fold it in half because I want a triangle label on my quilt put in the right hand corner of it. Then I'm just going to give that a good press so I have a nice crease and a guideline as to where I want to go. I use my heat erasable pen to draw some lines so that my writing will be a little bit straighter because I can't write straight no matter how hard I try. I'm using a Sharpie fine liner to write on there. You can also use a Micron 05, I believe a lot of people use. They both work very well. My Micron is out, so I'm just using my Sharpie, which is fine. It has worked for me in the past, so I will continue to use it. I'm going to be writing down the name of the quilt and where I got the pattern, and then my name and the month and year it was completed. You can add whatever you want. Some people also add the city where it was completed, but I don't go that far into depth. You just want to make sure that you want to stay far enough away from the edge because you do need to leave seam allowance there, so you want to leave for sure 1/4 inch. I usually try to do half. And once it's written on there, I just peel it off of the paper. It's very easy. And then I'm going to heat set this. So all I'm going to do is with a dry iron, and then I'm just going to put some heat on there, and that'll set the ink and it'll make it last a lot longer. If you want something more permanent, you'll have to go with embroidering. I'm too lazy for that. Now that my label's all ready, I'm going to attach it to my quilt. So I'm going to make sure that I'm putting it on the bottom right hand corner. You can really put it whichever corner you want. This is just my personal preference. I'm just going to line that up there and then use some of my wonder clips to clip it down. And then I'm going to baste it so that it's a little bit easier for when I sew the binding on later. So 2 edges of the triangle will be sewn down into the binding, and the other one I will be hand stitching down. I'm going to do my best to explain how I do it and to show you how I do it. Here I'm just basting those 2 sides down with my sewing machine just to make things easier later. Alright, so I'm ready to hand stitch that down. I have my needle and my thread, and I have tied a knot at the end. I am just using a single strand, so don't double it up. I mean, it's your personal preference, however you would like it. It's your quilt, you do it however you want. So I'm going to start off in the seam allowance at the edge there, just so that that knot will be hidden inside the binding later on. And then I want to push the needle forward, and you want to make sure that you're not going through all of the layers because you don't want that thread sticking out in the front. So just catch the backing. And then what I do is I kind of just grab a little bit of that label there, just a tiny bit. I am using a white thread, so it's going to be very hard to see, but I do want my thread to blend in so that the stitches aren't visible. And then you just want to go exactly aligned with the piece of thread you just pulled out, put your needle in underneath, grabbing just the backing and a little bit of batting, and then push up again about a 1/4 inch away. That's about how far apart I do my stitches. And then you just want to, again, grab a tiny little bit of that label, and then your stitches will be like barely even noticeable when this is done. And then I'm just going to continue on and finish doing all of this, and then I'll meet you at the end there and I'll show you how I tie it off. Alright, I only have a couple more stitches left till I reach the end, and you can see how nice it is. You can't really see the stitches. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to continue on till I get into that seam allowance of the edge again, so that my knots and tie-offs will be hidden inside the binding, which I have already sewn on there. But I am constantly checking to make sure that I'm not going through all the layers because I really don't want those little stitches to show up in the front. And when you're stitching through so many layers, it can sometimes be a little bit hard to get that needle to go through. A thimble would really help so you could push it through and not hurt your finger. Okay, now I'm inside the seam allowance, so I'm just going to take a small bite of fabric, just a little piece just so that I can tie it off. I'm not going to push my needle through all the way, just about that far or halfways. And then I'm going to grab the thread that's coming out of the fabric, not out of the needle, and wrap it around 3 or 4 times. Pinch it with my finger and pull the thread all the way through, and then we have a little knot there. I like to bury my threads into the seam allowance. It just adds a little bit more stability in the long run. And then once I have that pulled through, I'm just going to snip it off, and then my label is all sewn on. And then I'll show you what it looks like with the binding all around there. And I just really love the way that looks in the corner. You can do a rectangular or a square one. It's entirely up to you how you want to do your labels. It's your quilt. Thank you so much for watching.